Opening the center immediately claims vital space and prepares to unleash your bishops. Immediately creating a pawn chain prepares for a flexible setup, aiming to control key central squares without committing to early aggression. Developing the knight to c3 immediately pressures the center and prepares for kingside castling, showcasing an aggressive, open-game intention. Developing the knight to a natural square, it immediately pressures white's central pawn and prepares for castling. Opening the kingside, this aggressively invites immediate counterplay and a potentially exposed monarch. Prepares an immediate kingside fianchetto, aiming to lock down the long diagonal and challenge white's ambitious pawn advances. Developing the knight now bolsters the center's influence and prepares for castling, a sensible step in this dynamic pawn structure. Black solidifies the center and prepares for potential king's side action, developing a piece harmoniously. Developing the bishop to an active diagonal, eyeing black's king and potentially preparing castling, aiming for central dominance. Securing the monarch is paramount, freeing up pieces for development and potential counterplay. Solidifying the center, d3 prepares to deploy the queenside bishop and reinforces e4, creating a robust pawn structure against black's fianchetto. Solidifying the pawn chain and preparing for a queenside pawn push adds important structural integrity. Securing the king's safety now allows focus on developing the queenside forces. Boldly challenging the center, this advance seeks to dislodge white's bishop and seize queenside space. Stepping back from the pawn storm preserves the bishop's diagonal influence, preparing a more patient kingside buildup. Challenging white's queenside pawn structure by advancing the pawn opens up lines and potentially gains vital space. Securing the queenside structure prevents a pawn raid, though it yields some queenside passivity. Unlocking the queenside, the knight aims to reach the more active c5 square, challenging white's central control. Unleashing a pawn storm, white aggressively probes the kingside structure, aiming to shatter black's defenses and expose the monarch. Injecting life into the queenside pawn structure, this knight repositions to attack white's central control and potentially open lines. Preparing to connect the rooks, this maneuver clears the path for the king's side attack to gain momentum. Unleashing the bishop's diagonal pressure aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and create threats on the queenside. Shattering the pawn shield opens crucial diagonals for your bishops. Opening the h-file, the black king now faces a direct confrontation with white's queen and king's bishop, creating immediate attacking prospects along that newly formed open line. Repositioning the bishop to a2 prepares to eye the queenside pawn structure and offers flexibility for future development. A bold pawn thrust, aiming to disrupt white's queenside structure and open avenues for black's pieces. Unleashing a pawn storm, white seeks to crack open the queenside and exploit black's weakened dark squares. Opening the central files with this pawn thrust, black invites a sharp tactical battle and exposes their monarch's safety to immediate scrutiny. Seizing central space, this knight aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and potentially exploit the open files. Snapping that pawn opens a diagonal for your bishop and directly challenges the center, injecting tactical fireworks. Unleashing pressure on the queenside, this knight relocation creates immediate tactical threats and aims to disrupt black's pawn structure. Boldly seizing the initiative, this capture dramatically disrupts white's pawn structure, creating winning tactical avenues through the opened lines for black's pieces. Unleashing a stunning tactical shot, white exposes the black king's unsafe position and aims to dismantle the pawn shield. Fleeing the unleashed knight's threat, the king seeks refuge, but the pawn storm's aftermath leaves open lines a grave concern. Initiating a decisive pawn thrust to cleave open the kingside, transforming a static position into dynamic chaos. A bold gambit to reclaim material, seeking active piece play despite the compromised pawn structure. Reclaiming the pawn opens a crucial line for your rook, ready to exploit the exposed enemy king. Sensing the queen's precariousness, this brings the rook to a more active position, eyeing potential central breakthroughs. Sacrificing the queen here drastically alters the positional landscape, opening lines for aggressive piece activity and potentially creating unstoppable mating threats against black's exposed king. Opening the central files with the rook creates immediate threats against the king's precarious position. Initiating a decisive kingside attack by reclaiming the sacrificed pawn with an eye on the exposed black monarch. Unleashing a surprising queen check, black aims to disrupt white's awkwardly placed king and potentially salvage material from a precarious position. This defense, while aiming for activity, exposes the king to a significant assault, leaving the queenside dangerously open. Unleashing the knight to g4 creates fascinating tactical possibilities and puts immediate pressure on white's exposed king position.